Okay, folks, welcome back. In this next section, we're going to talk about event handlers. So I want to just pause and rewind to a few weeks ago when you were looking at the DOM, and you may have encountered code that looked something like this. So we have a button element being created here on line 4, and then we have this syntax on line 6 where we use a function called add event listener. And what we are doing here is we are registering an event handler, which is a function that we want to get triggered upon some sort of event happening. So for example, if a user clicks on this button, we want to trigger a function that will do some stuff. And that's how we write this using the DOM. And what we're going to look at in this next section is how to do the same thing, but when we're working within React. Okay, so we want to be able to pass some kind of function around and say, whenever a user clicks on a button, for example, or maybe some other kind of event, then trigger this function. How can we do that in React? And let's have a look at an example. So I'm just going to start the development server like so. Hopefully that's going to load that up, but in the wrong window. So I'm just going to move tab to a new window. And over here. And I need to, I've got this weird button appearing. Where does that come from?
It's from index.js, index.html, sorry. It's an example of like classic in
public. Oh, can I just get rid of this? Do you want me to leave that in?
No, yeah, remove it.
You can put it back in. Okay. Cool. So let's have a look at what I've got in app. At the moment in my app function, I'm returning just this single React element with a class name app. If I go to the browser and inspect the UI, let's have a look at what I've got. I inspect, go to inspector. Let's make this inside the body. No, I don't want all this nonsense. I don't want to see the HTML. Oh, this is annoying. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. Inside of here, we're going to create a button, and then we're going to see if we can get a function to trigger when we click on it. So let's do that. Let's create a React element in here. Button. Like so. See that appearing in here. Super unhelpful layout of the HTML in here, but we'll ignore that. So click on that. Nothing happening at the moment. So how do we register an event handler for this? So inside the button, what we can say is here on click. And if you actually start to type just on inside of here and you scroll down, you're going to get a bunch of different options for events that you can use inside React. So we have things like on abort, on blur, on click, etc., etc. So I'm just going to go with the on click in here. And what React has done is it said assignment, and then I've got curly braces. And here, the thing to remember is that we're going to pass a function in here that does something. So I could pass in an arrow function like this, saying clicked, something like that. Let's have a look and save that. What's going to happen is every time we click on the button, this function is going to be called. Let's see if that works. So if I go to the console, click, and there you go, and you can see that appearing here, and that's happening every single time. Okay. And this is an example where you can see the arrow function has been written in line, directly in the line like so, but you may see that function abstracted out and written in a separate place and then passed through. So what would that look like? Well, I might have something like this. Function handle click. So this is going to do something whenever it's clicked, and I can get rid of this. And I might just put console log in here. So, and then what we want to do inside of here, so we've got an error coming through from React, doesn't like something, syntax error here. That's good. What is that syntax error saying? JSX attributes must be assigned a non-empty expression. So what is React? So this is a good question to pose to you. What is React telling us here? Perhaps not obvious from what it's saying in the error message.
That there's nothing happening when you click.
Yes, there's nothing happening here, right? This is an empty expression, so I need to actually pass something in here and register something. So here, I want to pass the name of that function. One very, very common misconception and one common error that we see time and time again is for people to not pass the function name, but then to put parentheses like this and to call the function. That is not what you're supposed to do. You're just meant to pass the name of that function, and then React will take care of calling that whenever that user clicks on the button and that click event fires. So remember that you're passing the name of the function. You do not need to put parentheses like so. If so,
you for a second. If you do call the function, will it bring an error?
Let's see if it brings an error. Let's save it and see what happens. So let's refresh. No, but what you do see is this: I was clicked. It's being logged. So that function is running because we've called it. But what's not happening is when we click,
not doing it again.
It's not doing it again, because what needs to happen is we need to pass just the name of the function, so React will take care of calling it for us. So it's worth noting that on here. If you've not already used them, beta React docs talks about this, and it's worth pointing you in here because React is redoing its documentation. But if you search for event handlers down here and go down, you'll see exactly that here. So they will remind you about that exactly, and this documentation is excellent, so it's worth bearing that in mind. Okay, any more questions? Thank you for that question.
Yeah, one more question.
Go for it.
For example, if there is another variable which has same name as the function, how the React will clarify which function is it?
You mean like another handle click function?
Yeah, for example, in line 6, you have handle and handle click, and that's a function. If you have another variable in somewhere else in this file, for example, const handle click number, and you assign that like number 10, what would happen?
So you're imagining a situation where you had two handle click functions with the same name?
No, one function and one variable which have same name.
Right, okay. One function, same variable, the same name.
For example, if you create a variable in line 9, which has the same name as the handle click.
So something like this.
Yeah.
Like that, you mean?
Yeah, and assign like number 10. Just 10 or 9. Whatever.
Just a random number like that.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that passing error saying that variable name has already been used.
Okay, so which means the same name cannot be used twice.
Precisely. If you're creating variables like that, that's true. But what I'm going to show you next will show you how you can reuse the button component so that you can use different handle click functions. So let's do that now. So this may answer your question. So we might want to take this button and put it into its own component, right? Because it may get some styling or whatever, and it might become more complex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button.js component, and I'm going to just say in here, function button, and I'm going to return a button element as before. Click me. Okay. And what is the syntax? Can you remember what the syntax is for exporting out this button component?
Export default button.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly. Export default button, like so. That becomes, then I can import that inside of app.js. So I believe if I get rid of that and just do.
Do you need to write the React thing at the top as well? Do you need to do that every time? Or?
Right, what? Sorry, every time?
On the last one we were doing React, I can't remember what it was now. It was React something.
Oh, import React from React, you mean?
Import React, that's it. Yeah. Do we have to do that every time as well?
Good question. We'll come back to that in a moment and check to see if that doesn't work, if we remove it. So I'll leave that in for the time being, and then we'll come back. So function button, export it with import React from React at the top. If I try doing this now, then React will auto-complete the import for me when I started writing that, which is super, super useful. It knows to find it from components button file. All right, so let's get rid of this. And we can put that again into here like so, and check that it's all working. Save. And let's just see if we got the same UI. Perfect, that's all working. So change one thing at a time. So I think your question, Emily, was, will this still work if I remove this line? So when I was doing React as a young lad, a very long time ago now, this line, you had to always put this line in, right? Otherwise it would break and syntax, you get like an error from React. So if I delete it now, I get no error. So what the compiler is doing, if you want to know, is that it will be at some point, it will insert that import React from React line into this file. So it can be omitted here. But in the past, you had to put that line in. And
So
I don't know if it's best practice to leave it in now. I don't know what the standard is, but you may as well omit it, I imagine.
So does it not have to, does React do it automatically on its own?
Yeah, for React, something will be doing that in the background automatically.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's a matter of the React version you're using.
Exactly.
So I think you can omit it in React 18, which is the latest version. But for any project that was running a previous version, you have to include it.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, cool. So now I've got the button, but at the moment this button isn't reusable because it just displays the text "click me." And so we might want to do a number of different things with this button. We might want to reuse it in lots of different ways. So this text here, for example, we might want to change each time. So we might want to say text, and we might want to say click me like so. Or let's make it something more realistic. So let's say the download button, or this page. Let's render a few of these. I don't know. These are different actions that you might want to do. So we've got 3 buttons in the UI now, but we'll click me, click me, click me every single time. What I'm doing down here, to recap from last time again, passing through a prop or passing through an input through into this function component that we can use inside of here. So inside of button, we have this props object here. We can just console log props inside button. You get this object every single time. So we get this object with text next page, and we'll get this object with text subscribe and with download. So this is the input that we've passed through, or the prop that we've passed through to the function component. What I could do in here is I could access props.text, save that. It's literally reading it, so I need to make sure that that is wrapped inside curly braces. Now it will evaluate that, and now I've got a more reusable button component, right, with the different text appearing each time. Let's get rid of that. And then one other thing we can do as well is instead of just doing props.text, I can destructure text here. So which means I don't need to access the object. I just need to wrap curly braces around here, which means I'm pulling a text property off an object, like so. Cool. What about the function? Every time I click on these, it says I was clicked, I was clicked, I was clicked. What happens in a situation where we want to do different functionality every single time we render this button component? For that, we would have to do something similar with props. So let's get rid of this function. Let's imagine we had some other functions up here. So download, obviously I'm going to just do some console logs in here, downloading, but you can imagine that being a function that actually does a download. Similarly, I've got a function that's going to subscribe, like so. Let's do that in here, subscribe, and similarly as well for next page. Next page. Okay, so 3 different functions, and we want these 3 different functions to be triggered when we click on either the download or the next page component, like so. So we could create another prop here called handle click, and then we could pass through download, for example, that download function. Similarly, the button down here, we could pass in an input, and we could make that input next page, go to next page. And likewise down here, handle click, and assign that to be subscribe. Okay, so just take careful note of what I'm doing as I'm creating a prop called handle click. And what I'm doing here is I'm passing through, instead of text or another variable, I'm passing through the name of a function every single time.
Sorry, just to check, these props that you're using, are these specific words that are like embedded in React? Or
these words like download and go to next page,
or like text and handle click?
Text and handle click are whatever I've decided to call them, so they could be anything really. I could call that label if I wanted to.
Right, okay.
And it would still work. I could call handle click something different as well. That handle click is more of a convention that you will see being used by React developers. Cool. So in here, what I can do is I can take off handle click, and let's just check to see what handle click looks like. So you can see in the console output now I've got this function called download, I've got this function called go to next page, and this function called subscribe. And that handle click is coming through as I pass through the button every single time. Okay. So now, what's going to happen when I click? Downloading, go to next page, and subscribe. And so now what you're seeing is a pattern where we pass through a function so that we can trigger whatever functionality we like when we're rendering that button component. Okay. Any other questions about that before we pause there?
So you can create more than one props in each button?
You can pass down more than one prop, absolutely. You can pass down loads of props if you want to into here, yes. Whether you would want to do, so go ahead. Go on, go for it, go for it.
Yeah, if you want to change Maybe it's not relevant at the moment, but for example, the background color of the body page, if you click the button, you can relate that ones.
So you wanted to click on a button and then change the background color of the whole page. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah.
It would be possible to do something like that if you wanted to. Yeah, you could apply some styling when you click on that. Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that. Cool. Any other questions? No? Shall we pause there? Awesome.